Hi there, this is Melissa Fricky from Calix, and welcome to today's webinar. Your small business market is bigger than you think. How much money are you leaving on the table? We're thrilled to have you with us. We'll officially kick things off in a moment as folks continue to join. Before we get started, I have a quick short list of housekeeping tips to keep you oriented to the webinar before we get started. Today's session is being recorded and a copy will be sent to everyone who registered. So if you miss anything or you want to share it with your team, you'll have it in your inbox soon. You'll see a question and answer panel. That's the place to drop your questions at any time. We'll try to answer as many as we can after the presentation portion is completed. The chat is open too. Share your thoughts and reactions along the way. We love to see the conversation. This webinar is designed to be interactive, insightful, and worth your time. We're excited to dig in. We invite you to participate in the 3 poll questions to gain insight and direction as to how we can help you in the future. And we will use that to tailor our presentation. With that, I'll hand it over to our host, Jacob Ferguson. Area Vice President with Calix. The mic is all yours, Jacob.
All right. Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Melissa, can you see me okay?
Yeah, look good, Jacob.
Yeah. Okay.
Looking
Awesome.
great.
So good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're going to dive into a topic that we haven't really talked about so much on a specific Calix webinar, which I'm really excited to do. And that's really just understanding what our total addressable market is and what our small business market actually looks like. So as Melissa said, hey, the chat's open. You're more than welcome to drop comments and questions along the way, and hopefully we'll monitor in the background here. So let's jump in. So a couple guidelines, right? We're gonna have it's an open conversation. Gabe and I are gonna more or less jump into the content. We'll kind of go back and forth, but hopefully we'll have some content that you haven't seen before and generate some questions along the way. There are a couple polls along the way, which kind of just guides the conversation. And if there are some points that we may not have seen before, we're definitely going to highlight them in this session and see if we can address those in the 45 minutes that we have together. Okay. So let's talk about the small business opportunity as a whole. So typically, most customers, and we've talked to lots of them over the last few years since we've launched SmartBiz, we've talked a lot about it where customers say, hey, listen, we have a small business solution or we have a small business market. However, it's either underrepresented in their own mind or in some cases overinflated. So we want to understand exactly what that addressable market is and try to understand what the market opportunity is. Statistically, though, even though some people, some customers do inflate that number, maybe there's a little bit more than what they think. Typically, we're humans. We drive down our streets on a regular basis. We're in the communities that we serve, so we see the businesses as we drive by, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's representative of the entire footprint. So we want to make sure that we understand that market as a whole and address it appropriately. Okay. So when we get into small business, really what we want to understand is offering up a solution that's purpose-built for small businesses and figure out what that market looks like. Now, we're all very aware of what the residential market looks like, and that tends to be the largest tranche of customers that we want to go after. So the next step or the next level to that pyramid is the SMB side of things. So what does that small business market look like? And does it look like a residential customer? Meaning, do we want to build a program or a solution or a package that addresses small businesses, but we're using residential services as a whole? And in some cases, that's happening today. But most SMBs out there are looking for something a little bit different, right? And in order to stand out and address that next tranche, which is that SMB market, the next largest market in your area, we need to differentiate to some extent. Some customers are looking at SLAs. Some customers are looking at account managers and people being able to actually manage their account. And in some cases, it's just a differentiation in speed and service, right? We want to add a little bit more to that. We want a differentiated solution so that they understand that the SMB market as a whole is different. There are ways to serve that market with current solutions, but in most cases, SMBs are looking for something bigger, better, something to make their operations a little bit more efficient, and potentially drive more revenue for their business as a whole. So that's a big component of it. And then figuring out how do we sell to that market, because it's not the same as a residential customer. A residential customer, typically you're shopping by price. They might have a list of the competitors in their area. So they know what they're looking for as a whole, maybe not on the speed side of things. They don't necessarily understand how speed translates to what they're using within their home. But on the SMB side, they're really looking for, yes, keep my business up and running, but more specifically, I want to make sure that I have no downtime. And what that means from my point of sale system goes down, that translates to X dollars going out the door. So we want to make sure that we address that, and that's what we're going to be tackling today. Okay. So a couple stats for you. In the United States alone, there's about 5.4 million businesses that have less than 20 employees. And in the last year, in a 12-month cycle, 5.5 million new businesses are created in that year. Now, that might seem like it's a little bit of a the stats don't line up. This is full from the 2024 statistics component. And really what we're looking at is 5.4 million businesses that are claiming to have less than 20 employees. And yes, 5.5 million that are just registered and created within that year. The true number is somewhere around 32 million businesses that are sub 20 employees, although not all of them claim to have employees. So think about a small doctor's office where there's two partners that are effectively running it. These are two consultants, right? They are contractors. They are separate entities. So even though they are operating a business like a dentist's office or a doctor's office, they will look like when they report their revenue to the IRS or anyone else, they're labeled as a one employee shop or effectively no employees. So the actual opportunity is north of 5.4 million, give or take. It could be upwards to 10 to 15 million, depending on how people report their revenue to the IRS. So this is the opportunity that we're going to go after. Now, the challenge here is now we understand that there's 32 million businesses out there, but we just called out a few examples that aren't fits, right? If you're a holding company or you're a real estate agent and you're a contractor, effectively, you don't have a physical operating entity or a brick and mortar store. So is that a small business opportunity from a broadband perspective? Probably not. So we need to figure out a way to weed those out of your total addressable and then go after the ones that actually make sense. And when we do figure that out, right, how much are they actually willing to spend? And in most cases, they're investing a lot of money into operating their business upwards to about $50,000 a year, just to keep their business operating and make it more efficient and make it more effective. And that's part of the wallet share that we want to go after, is that 10 to 50 million, $10 to $50,000 a year per SMB. Okay. So how did we approach this? We have residential services, right? Just generally, and I'm saying the collective we, not Calix, but we have residential services that we can go after the market with. And then there's also these large enterprise versions of business solutions where they might be over-engineered. I've heard people say it's too much club, if you want to use a golf analogy. And they tend to be very expensive. And we need to figure out what that gap is and how do we fit somewhere more towards the middle and maybe even more towards leaning into the residential side, because it has to be cost effective enough with an ROI attached to it so that a small business owner says, hey, listen, this makes a lot of sense. I can now operate my business a little bit more effectively. These are things that I don't have to think about on a daily basis. And it doesn't cost me an arm and a leg in order to deploy it and manage it and keep it up and running. Right? IT departments, IT professionals outside of the SMB are looking for contracts, and they're looking for ways to keep a retainer on hand so that they can support those small businesses. With something like SmartBiz, you don't necessarily have to have that relationship with an IT professional, although we do somewhat recommend it. There's far more things than just broadband and keeping your business up and running from a Wi-Fi perspective. But it's no longer in their purview and the only thing that they're focused on. Okay, so finding that balance between enterprise solutions and residential solutions is really what we want to look for. Okay, so real quick, I want to take a quick pause. So right now, what are your top concerns about launching a small business solution? And we're going to put this in the chat. We're not gonna close this out. We'll keep this running in the background, but I want to take just 10 seconds to allow everybody to just formulate their thoughts if you can. There's no wrong answers. We've talked to hundreds of broadband service providers across the United States and Canada. We have a strong understanding of some of the challenges that you're running into, but if there's something unique that you feel you're running into, we would be glad to read that out and see if we can address that. Okay, so I'm going to pause for just 10 seconds, and then we'll keep going.
And as an aside, Jacob, I think we originally had this as a multiple choice question, but we were interested in getting a little bit more, less generic feedback about some of the challenges that people, and we also didn't want to, box in some of the challenges. So very, very interested to hear what people's feedback is here for sure.
We can try to keep as many cuss words off the chat as much as possible if they're that big. Okay, let's keep going, and we'll keep this poll up and running in the background. Okay, so hang on, no, I've got to.
Yeah, I think you'll hand it over. Oh, okay.
I can't see. There we go. Okay, so evaluating your market opportunity. So what does that really mean? There's a couple ways to do this, right? So my previous life, I actually came from a data and analytics company. So although this gives me a little bit of PTSD, at the same time, it's very important to go through this because it's a big part of going to market and figuring out how you're going to do it. So the first step here is figuring out public data, right? So if you want to get to either if you live in Canada, you're using Stats Canada, you can go to any public source in the United States as well. Most government sites will tell you exactly how many businesses are registered in each zip code. These are great access points, so you can get it basically within the day, log into a website, pull down as much information as possible, and then figuring out how to use it. Now we'll get into some of the downsides of some of the public data. On the private side, lots of use cases here. So think Zoom Info or Dun & Bradstreet or Corey or any of the Gardner or any of those kind of pieces. These are typically paid. and they're far more granular, but they also have their downsides, which we'll talk about as well. And then the next piece is the best is more or less how do we join all these things together and marry it up with our own data? And again, that's the collective own. So your own information on your own customers to figure out what's an ideal customer profile, and then take that model and apply it to what you've seen in the total addressable market and figure out exactly which customers to go after. So visually, this is roughly what it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to use public data. I'm going to go in and I'm going to pull down all of the tax returns, and it's not the tax returns themselves. You're not going to get all, how much money people are making, but here's how many businesses are registered, and here's the industries that they claim to be operating in. Keep in mind, I use an asterisk there because not everybody reports exactly what type of business they do based on what they actually do. So that's one of the caveats that you want to go through. So here's the big net that I'm throwing out into the ocean. I'm going to pick up fish. I'm going to pick up dolphins. I'm going to pick up whales. I'm going to pick up crabs. And I don't necessarily know exactly what I'm going to go through. So I want to take that big net and start to whittle down or change the bait and figure out exactly what my total addressable market is afterward. The next step is taking some of those private sources and figuring out, okay, let's whittle down the entire market, the entire addressable that I got from the public data source. And let's figure out, okay, how many of these are actually operating? How many of them are directly in my footprint? How many of them have more employees than just one, right? If I want to segment based on one particular industry, I can do that. So that brings my total addressable down to a slightly more manageable size. However, in that orange circle are also your customers, right? Your active customers, the ones that are already paying you money. So to some extent, we want to either take those out if I'm going after net new customers, or I want to use that information to create an ideal customer profile and then apply it to that orange circle. So everything in that, let's call it the middle orange ring, the ones that are not your current customers and are part of your total addressable market, is really the market that you want to go after. It's very succinct. You now have a ICP that you can apply to it, and you can start bringing go-to-market planning, whether it's a marketing campaign, a sales campaign, sales resources, marketing resources. Now you have a defined market that you can go after, and it's relatively clean, and you can go after it with whatever tech stack that you're using today. Gabe, I don't know if you had any comments that you want to make there.
Just to top up the comment that you made there, Jacob, around the ideal customer profile piece of this, I think that's so important and something that, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later also, but that gets slept on a lot in this conversation is leveraging the information that you know about your ideal customers to then go out and target additional folks who look like that. And certainly we can talk about that from a residential side also, but on the business side, it's so important to understand who those good customers are. So I think it's a really great point to call out here.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so let's dive into a little bit of public data. So they're typically a year off, right? Because they submit their tax returns. You're going to have all the registrations throughout that year. It gets compiled and then absorbed into whatever database it's getting dumped into. So 12 months would be fast, in my opinion. It's likely going to be 24 to 36 months behind. Now, is that a bad thing just to get an understanding, like a macro understanding of your market? Probably not. However, if you are going after brand new customers that just registered their business that month, which by the way, their first purchase is typically Wi-Fi or internet services, 3 years you've already lost if they're not a customer already. So not an ideal scenario there, but allows you at least that first swath of, hey, what am I looking at? What's out there? How do I stack up maybe against a neighboring town or a neighboring state? And then start some analytics from there.
And Jacob, just to top up the comment you made earlier about 5.5 million new businesses being opened on an annual basis. If you're that far behind, you've missed out on, a tremendous amount of growth from that perspective also. So that becomes a real challenge when you're using public data like this.
Yeah, agreed. Time is of the essence. If it's a brand new business getting started and they just signed a lease, you want to know about that within in the first 48 hours for sure. Okay, so a couple examples. We're definitely not going to go through the benefit of any one of these, but a couple examples if you do want to take a screenshot just to understand where you could potentially start. So what do you do with it? What can you do with it? So you can do trending. You can get a sense for economic development efforts in the area, economic development growth trajectories. You can understand unemployment, employment surplus, which again is not always the case, but there are states out there that have an employment surplus. Migration patterns, right? So just understanding if people are moving to your footprint as opposed to potentially leaving your footprint, right? These are kind of the macro understanding that you're trying to derive from the public data sources. You can ingest a significant amount of this information, but again, it requires the ability to actually dissect, figure out exactly what you're going to use it for, and potentially have an analytics background where you'll be able to drive some meaning from all that data, because it is substantial. Okay, now when we're talking about private sources, I gave you a couple examples a little bit earlier. Typically, there's a fee associated to it, especially if you're thinking about ZoomInfo or 6 Sense or Hoovers or Dun & Bradstreet. But they typically have a UI or some type of portal that you can go in and do a little bit of dissecting for yourself, and then potentially export that information. It's a great tool out there. There's definitely a lot to be had. Not all of them are expensive. Some of them can be relatively cheap. And they tend to be updated more frequently. So when we're going back to the example of, hey, I just started a new business and I'm looking for Wi-Fi services or internet services, those will be registered on the day that those businesses get registered. So if I register a business on Monday, let's say it takes 48 hours for that information to upload to some of these data brokers. That's a quicker way to potentially say, okay, here's some of the businesses that are opening up in my area. I need to reach out to them immediately and figure out exactly how I can support them along the way. Okay. Now, Corey, so the Center of on Rural Innovation, is one of these providers that we've been working with for the last couple of years now, where it's kind of merging both of those two components, both public data and private data, so that you get a little bit more of a sense of, okay, in this one particular county or this one particular zip code, here are some of the changes. Typically, what we recommend our customers to look at is employment growth stats. That's a big one, right? If you're in a rural area and you're trying to promote, hey, work from home, or you might have a job leaving, Miami or New York or something like that, and you want to move to the rural areas, you can still hold that position as long as you have the ability to effectively do your job. And there's a big trend line in doing that. Lots of people are moving to rural areas and doing exactly that. So understanding the employment rates in that area, and then even GDP growth rates in your area. So businesses opening up warehouses or distribution centers, that's a big component of economic development, and that's going to drive a lot of job growth in your area. More job growth means more potential customers, means more homes being built, which means more, right? These are leading indicators on where you want to invest your time. Okay. And how does it stack up? So a couple screenshots, and we have access to this. So if you are a Calix customer today and you want to learn a little bit more about Corey information, just ping your account rep, and we'll be able to give you a little bit more insight on this. But what I really love is that bottom left-hand corner. So being able to actually compare yourself to, let's say, a neighboring town or a neighboring county, or even a state that's nearby. It's not meant to say, hey, we rank this way and they rank the other way. It's meant to just say, hey, there are growth rates. We look a lot like this other county, and yet for some reason our subscriber growth is not as strong as theirs, or vice versa, right? So just being able to have an understanding of where you stack, and potentially building go-to-market plans that fit those other markets, and potentially stealing from some of your partners and saying, hey, what did you do really well in that area? We'd like to do something similar. What do we need to do in order to accommodate that?
Or if you're serving multiple counties, and one county is doing really well and another county perhaps is not.
Great point.
Understanding what's happening across those two different locations to get a better understanding of why one area may be struggling. I do just want to point out, I dropped a link directly to the Corey Broadband Impact tool in the chat. As Jacob said, it is free for Calix customers. You do just have to have a My Calix login to get access to it. But once you do, you can start putting in counties you serve, maybe counties that are surrounding your area, and start to look through this data. There's a tremendous amount of insight in here that can be definitely beneficial to understand what's going on in these markets.
Yeah, love that, and would love feedback as well. We work closely with Corey. If there are changes that we want to see in this platform, we'd love to hear it, and we'd make those suggestions on your behalf. So we went through good, we went through better, and now we're at best. So we're at the all-in-one platform, and there's no better time to hand over to Gabe.
Perfect. I did just want to address one question that came up from Donovan in the chat. The question was, does Corey capture data on Canadian cities, towns, etc.? I don't believe so. I'm pretty sure it's just US and
Just US.
Yeah. Okay. Now, this is not to say we can't, reach out to the folks in Canada who I'm sure are doing similar things. So I think that's a good follow-up for Calix, and we'll certainly do that. But as of right now, it is just US-based data. So as far as kind of the all-in-one platform that Jacob was talking about, and bringing all of these things together, we wanted to talk just a little bit more about that all-in-one platform. So generally, this does require a subscription, but it's providing that data and tools all in a single application. It's frequently updated, it's frequently refined, and the real power of this is something that Jacob touched on earlier. It's combining the information and insight about your existing subscribers with your prospects in a single all-in-one application, and giving you tremendous insight into what's working with your existing subscribers, what that addressable market is, and how can we get to that really target ideal customer profile that Jacob was speaking to earlier. So Jacob, if you don't mind, did you give me control, or do you want to just jump to the next one? Okay, cool. Perfect. Thank you.
I'll be your Vanna.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, my friend. So really I'll move through this quickly, and we'll look at a specific example here on the next slide, but it's that end-to-end platform with Calix Engagement Cloud that allows us to have data and insight about your subscribers and your prospects, allows you to do really meaningful segmentation around those groups, and then integrate that into campaign execution tools that you're already using. Things like HubSpot, things like Meta, maybe just actually giving a direct call list to your business sales folks to do a call down, and then track the performance against those to make sure that you're growing your ROI for these small business customers. And we'll talk through actually a little bit later around a high level ROI, around how you can start to think about the value of what these SMB opportunities look like within your business. So Jacob, on the next slide, let's just take a quick look at what this actually kind of looks like in a real world application. So on the that left-hand side of the chart there is really getting into the detail around the types of businesses that are operating in your area, and getting into very specific things around what type of business is it, how many employees do they have, how long have they been in business, what is their revenue that's being driven from a location by location perspective, and then the ability to filter based on what you believe is your ideal customer profile. So once we've identified what that ICP is, then we can start to drill in and say, okay, we know that 20 or less employees is really where the sweet spot is. So let's make sure that we're filtering them on those groups. We know that retail trade stores is really where we can shine. So let's focus on those retail locations, and then get very specific with, here's a list of customers, or prospects, I should say, that are not my customers yet, that I can use to go out and grow my business. The other use case, and we don't have a screen for this, so I'll just talk about it really at a high level. But one of the other areas that's been really interesting is we've looked at this data for our customers that are leveraging Engagement Cloud, and I've sort of joked that it's the identifying liars use case, which sounds a little bit weird. But what we see a lot is that there are businesses that are being offered, or there are businesses that are run out of homes. And with the data we have coming into Engagement Cloud, we can really easily identify those customers who are running a business or have a registered business out of their home. but are on a residential service tier. And so it's a great opportunity to go and offer them a more appropriate business type service, or maybe a SOHO type service, a small office, home office. But we can align their needs to the services that you're selling, and we can really easily identify those folks with the data that's coming into Engagement Cloud. So I just wanted to mention that use case also. And I think with that, we're going to move to another poll. Yes? All right, Melissa, perfect. Thank you. And we'll let this go for just a moment here, gather some feedback from folks. Certainly, this is an area where we see, I think, Jacob, you see this regularly, that in many situations, our customers are offering residential-like service tiers to their small business customers and not doing a tremendous amount of differentiation between what a residential customer would get and a business customer would get.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on it in the last slide as well. If I'm a small business owner in a rural area, the likelihood of me living in that rural area is also pretty high. So
Great
I'm
point.
effectively two customers. If you do it right, depending on how you market, I'm effectively two customers. And then there's also the conflict of, if I have residential services at both my business as well as my home, there's really no delineation. I don't know exactly what I'm paying for, if I'm paying anything extra at my office. So I want to make sure that, hey, if we're going after Dr. Smith, and Dr. Smith also has a home office, these two are treated separately, and they're getting the experience as if they're a residential customer as well as an SMB.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Okay, I think the poll is completed.
Yeah, poll is closed. Yes. So why don't we jump to the next one, Jacob, and let's actually talk a little bit about ideal customer profile, because this is, I think, something we can both riff on a little bit, and I know you have some good experience around. So much of what we're talking about here is leveraging data and insight to identify who those ideal clients are. What is that ideal client profile? And what we see a lot with our customers is the things down the left-hand side of the screen that really makes for a great fit for a more appropriate small business opportunity. They don't have a ton of employees. They don't have cybersecurity. They've got really minimal IT resources, as Jacob touched about earlier, or maybe they're paying somebody way too much money to manage their IT, and there's an opportunity to have some savings there, as well as some of these other things in place. Do they have a point of sale system? Do they have staff that's using the internet? Do they have guests that are using the internet? And the reality is that people that fall into this bucket, they're not generally technical experts. They opened a bakery, or they opened a store, or they opened a retail store. They just want to do that thing. That is the thing that they are the expert in. And so it's a great opportunity to outsource that to somebody like you, who is the technical expert in the areas that you're serving. You want anything else you'd top up there, Jacob, or speak to the brainstorm piece of this?
The only thing I'd add is it doesn't have to be all these bullet points either. So
Great point.
if you think about like a plumbing distribution center or something like that, there's not a lot of end customers that are coming to that distribution center, and they're staying there for an hour, and they need access to Wi-Fi. However, they are heavily reliant on the POS system. As contractors come in, it's just transaction after transaction after transaction, not to mention any type of IoT that's more or less driving their business to pick the parts out of the warehouse. So even in that particular case, Wi-Fi as a whole isn't really meant to drive more traffic for specific customers, but it's heavily dependent to keep their business operating and continue the flow of money, which is, if you're a small business owner, if you're not chasing that component of it, that's really what's keeping your lights on, is the money coming in. So
yeah, it's a great point. And as we think about discovery needs, and question asking, this is really where it becomes super important to understand the needs of your customer and how to make sure that your solution is going to fit. And I'll jump a little bit further on this slide, but just going to that tailor questions to your prospect's business. This is really where we get into the meat of a proper sales cycle where, Jacob just brought up a great point there, that, distribution warehouse, they're going to have different pain points that will be solved with something like SmartBiz versus a retail store or a coffee shop. But there are going to be common themes that are identified across these industries and verticals. The other piece of this that becomes really important is thinking about those need questions, those need payoff questions. How would it impact your business if your point of sale system didn't work for 3 hours? And not scare them, but get them really thinking about, oh my goodness, if I actually can't do commerce, that is going to be significantly negatively impactful for my business. And then great news, you all have a solution for that with cellular backup. So I love those kind of open-ended questions from that perspective and getting really to the need and the need payoff that's going to be beneficial for the customer.
And just to double down on that, this is where the sales motion from a residential perspective is far different than one with a business. Not SMB, it goes all the way up to enterprise. It generally has to come down to a payoff. Like what am I actually getting in return for having something like SmartBiz in place? Is it operational efficiency? Is it more revenue? Is it more brand awareness? Whatever it might be, and it has to translate to a business value. I'm not saying that salespeople struggle with that one generally, but it's just different. And I think most people just have to sharpen that sword if they haven't been selling directly to SMBs on a regular basis.
Yep. Yeah, great point. And then as far as starting the conversation, this is kind of leading those questions down to those need payoff questions and really thinking about what are the specific things that would benefit, benefit benefit the subscriber, I should say. So again, those questions around how are you protecting your network today? Do you accept credit cards? What are you doing to protect your customers' financial data? These are things that should really get that small business owner thinking. And again, the good news is that you have a solution that will help solve all of these challenges. One additional thing I will say here, though, is there are some basic questions here. Tell me about your business, some of those sorts of things. In any sales conversation, it's super important to do research so you're walking in there as informed as possible. And I will say things like Copilot and other AI agents can be extremely beneficial to help you do this in an efficient way so that you can answer some of these questions. If you're going into a conversation with a customer, ask AI to go look at the reviews and start to maybe even bring some of those reviews up in the customer conversation. So some of that basic stuff can be done in advance so that you can get to the real meat of questions and the ones that are going to have more of a specific business payoff.
I love that. Use ChatGPT or anything to get the reviews. I love that. First of all, as a career salesperson, that first question, tell me about your business, especially if it's a cold call, is not great. It's not the best way to start your conversations. And to Gabe's point, do a little bit of research, just the very minimum, just to understand, hey, do they have a website? Where are they located? What's the rough square footage of their area? Do they have a patio? Those kind of things, just so you're talking more their language beforehand. Because there's nothing worse than going to the doctor and the doctor says, tell me your problems. And
Tell me what hurts.
In reality, yeah, you'd
Everything.
rather go in there. Exactly.
And then Jacob, you touched on this a little bit, but just to hit on this, so many different types of businesses that you may not necessarily have thought of are really great for these types of solutions. RV parks is one that comes up all the time that I hadn't necessarily considered when we started talking about these solutions. Things like gyms and fitness or beauty salons, obviously people are coming in there, they're in there for some period of time. Those make a ton of sense. Churches is another great one, houses of worship. That's an area where it's a great opportunity to lean into how you're protecting the people that are coming in. We see, obviously, especially in rural areas of the United States, that there's usually a very large number of churches in these areas. You've also got kids coming in. Think about when I was going to church as a kid, you got youth groups coming in on a weekly basis and those sorts of things. So lots of different people that are coming in, they're all bringing their devices, and it's a great opportunity to provide a really safe experience for the people who are coming to that church or house of worship.
And again, not each of these are the same. So in a place of worship, are they going to have a point of sale system at the front? Probably not, right? They're reliant on the baskets as they get passed around. The best use case, and I typically use this on a regular basis, is a brewery. Breweries have both a front house, they have a back house. They typically have customers coming in and staying for a little while, similar to like a restaurant. And then they could potentially have a patio of some type. So the footprint tends to be quite large, and the use case is all encompassing. So it kind of covers off every single value point that you're looking for in an SMB. Whereas you get to a chiropractic clinic, they're not going to have a outdoor patio unless it's a pretty swanky chiropractic clinic, but very dependent on POS. Some of the IoT devices that they leverage within the office, and if there's a waiting room, then potentially having a guest Wi-Fi. So being able to pick and choose how you orchestrate each solution is key here.
And just to get down to kind of brass tacks here around what this means from a revenue perspective, it's a great opportunity to increase ARPU and to drive incremental revenue into your business. This is something that we've seen really consistently with our customers who have launched these types of solutions into market. Is their customers are dealing with a ton. They're busy, they've got a bunch of competing priorities, they want that trusted technology partner, and they're willing to pay for it when you make it easy and align around the value that they're going to get out of that. And Jacob, if you jump to the next slide, I've got just a very simple example, and I'm happy to share this. I just put it together in a simple Excel spreadsheet. So if anybody's interested in getting access to this, you can kind of put your own numbers in, please just reach out, and I'm more than happy to share this. But it's a kind of a simple flow to say, all right, what are the three main areas that we can really impact with a better business solution? The way we've seen our customers doing this is thinking about what's their total mix of existing subscribers now, what's their overall penetration rates in the markets that they serve, and what's their churn rate for their customers on an annual basis for those business customers. And those are really three key areas where we can drive some significant benefit. Driving customers into higher end service tiers, right sizing them with an appropriate level of service based on their needs. That can be significantly impactful. Driving up take rates by having a better solution that you're bringing to market, you're able to increase the number of business subscribers that are coming in. And we see this as a real growth area for our customers. And then on the churn side, proactively getting out in front of any potential risk of churn and really embedding themselves deeply into the day-to-day activities. If I'm a small business owner and my broadband service provider is providing me a way to ensure that my point of sale system never goes down, even if somebody comes along with a few dollar cheaper price point, I'm probably not leaving because there is a tremendous amount of commerce that's tied up in the relationship that I have with them. So we've got those three kind of key areas: that revenue from mix shift, revenue increase from take rates, and revenue saved from churn decrease. And in this simple example where there's 1,000 business subscribers, this is almost a 20% increase in revenue with some pretty basic and conservative assumptions. So there's a great opportunity here to really drive incremental revenue and drive financial benefit back to the organization. And then Jacob, as far as examples, I know you've worked with a lot of these customers, super closely as well, but this is something that we've just continued to see as we see our customers launch these types of solutions into market. There's a tremendous amount of interest, and a tremendous amount of financial benefit that can be driven from these solutions as they're launching them. SC Telecom, I think, is a great example of this, and they've recently launched their value-based offer solutions as well, really targeting having specific solutions that are targeted at specific customers to make sure that they're driving the value. It's not just a 100 meg service, a 500 meg service, a 1 gig service. They're being really thoughtful about what is the customer going to use this for, and how do I ensure that I'm solving for those needs and the package that I'm putting together addresses those specific concerns. And they've seen massive increases in ARPU by bringing these new solutions to market. It's been a fantastic, really a fantastic outcome for them.
And it somewhat depends on where you are in the life cycle or your total your customer relationship and where you are in that curve. Because if you've had a price increase, let's say within the last 12 or 24 months, and yet nothing really changed from a value perspective, it might not be the best time to go back to them and say, hey, I'm packing in a whole bunch of value into the solution itself with your existing subscribers and also charging an additional $20 or $30. That might not work. You might have to stagger it a little bit and say, hey, listen, I'm going to pack a whole bunch of value in because we did a price increase last year. I'm going to backfill the value and then potentially increase their price, let's say 2-3 years down the road. Vice versa, if you haven't had a price increase strategy at all, or you haven't redone your VBOs or changed your packaging as a whole, this is a perfect time to start talking about exactly what Gabe's talking about. Hey, let's get rid of the 250 or the 100 meg tier. Let's just make it 500 meg, include SmartBiz, increase the price by X dollars, and effectively migrate everybody to that bucket as the minimum. And now from a customer perspective, they're saying, okay, listen, I'm paying an extra $30 or whatever it is, but my speed's gone up. I'm getting a splash page. I've got redundancy on my network. I have, access controls. I can control my employees, all the different value statements in SmartBiz. All of a sudden, this price increase is more or less toned down, right? They don't necessarily understand, or they don't have to focus entirely on that. They're focusing on the value that they're driving. And then to Gabe's point, right, keeping customers longer, right? There's now value packed into that same dollar amount. If a competitor comes down the road, they're going to save them an extra $5 or $10. It's going to slow that customer down to potentially leave if they know that they've got all of these things and assigned value to it. And that's the key, is assigned value.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's kind of a perfect transition to the value discussion, Jacob. So look at that. It's almost like we know what we're doing.
Like we rehearsed it.
Yeah. So I love this slide because to me, it's a perfect way to set up a value-based offer discussion. It's not focusing on what the product does. It's focusing on what it does for them, for that end subscriber. It's, again, allowing them to continue to take orders. It's allowing them to provide a guest network to the people that are coming in and out of their locations on a day-to-day basis. And it's really, again, speaking to that value that the customer is going to see in the solution. If you jump to the next one, Jacob, this is really what we're seeing on both the residential and the business side. But why would you want to use a value-based offer strategy? I didn't realize each one of these was builds. Do you mind just building them out? It's really about building relationships, building trust. It's showing that you really understand what's going on in their business and you're adding value. It's all around, truly listening to your customer and what outcome are they looking for, and then making sure that you're building a solution that meets that need. And the nice part about this too is you don't have to have, yes, we talked about lots of different types of businesses that this is great for, but you don't have to have 100 different packages. There's going to be a lot of solutions that fit for, the church and there's a lot of similarities between the church and maybe the retail store, right? Where people are coming in and out, or the restaurant or whatever, where, there's constantly this churn of people coming in and out. And so a lot of their needs are going to be the same. So pick the ones that, pick the 3 or 4 that are going to cover the 80% of use cases, and then, worry about the 20% when you get there. But even building these value-based offers and value-based offer framework, you can still be thoughtful about how many solutions you're bringing to market. And then if we think about, how to identify these value-based services. So this is a lot of the work that our success team does with our customers as well, but really looking deeply at that data, understanding the employee size, the industry, and the subsegment of, what type of business is this. But again, really aligning what fits best for your market. And by leveraging that data and insight, we can identify where that 80% is, where that sweet spot is, and then really go focus on those customers, or focus on those, well, I guess customers and prospects. And we've kind of talked through some of these examples already, Jacob, so we could probably move through these fairly quickly. The retail trade store we talked a bit about, right? What are their needs? Their needs are safeguarding their business and their customers, that business continuity, making sure that they can that they continue to do, can take commerce, having that safe and secure customer Wi-Fi, and keeping the point of sale system secure. That's a huge part of this as well. So those are the needs that you would really lean into from a value perspective. On the light industrial side, that plumbing warehouse, the plumbing warehouse that Jacob was speaking to earlier, it's safeguarding their business. This is another area that doesn't get talked about enough, but it's that cybersecurity piece. Unfortunately, many of these small businesses are the ones that get attacked with ransomware. My mother-in-law worked for a company like this that was unfortunately, attacked from a cybersecurity and ransomware perspective, and they didn't have the IT staff to just support this. So it's a great opportunity for you to lean into that from a cybersecurity perspective as well. And if we jump to the next one, Jacob, really this is where leveraging Engagement Cloud can be super beneficial. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but just to be really specific, allows you to target a specific group of customers or prospects, that ideal customer profile that we talked about, a retail trade store, less than 20 employees. Here's the specific list of people that I want to go reach out to. And then here's collateral that we have on the right-hand side in the electronic content builder. That's an example of something from our ECB, as we lovingly call it, that speaks directly to the benefits that a smart biz, that a customer would be getting with the smart biz solution. So target a specific group of people, have specific messaging and a specific value-based offer that aligns to that is going to be a great recipe for success. And we talked about ECB just a little bit, but just to top this up, we have tons of resources to help our customers do this. Most of the customers we work with are small. They have small marketing teams, sometimes even smaller business sales teams, as Jacob, you well know. So making sure that we have the content and the resources available for your marketing and your sales team, we want to make this super easy for you. That includes full website templates, social media campaigns, all of the things that you see here on the screen. And these are all customizable and personalized, can be personalized to your brand, your logo, your colors. Within a couple of minutes, you can create a customized piece of collateral that you can then go off and have for a sales conversation.
And I know we're getting close to time, but this is a perfect example. And Gabe, you brought it up again, like the concept of having a sales team. It depends on how big your market is, and we get that. Every customer in our world is different. But if you want to capture an entire market or cast a very wide net, you don't necessarily need humans to do that all the time, right? Having a solid marketing campaign to drive them to web assets, perfect, right? That's a great starting point. And then have somebody just be able to follow up on it. And again, if we're going after a certain type of retail versus light industrial, being able to create marketing material that's tailored to one or two specific markets, highly impactful, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting a piece of a brochure or some type of letter or an email that has a brewery on it, and yet I'm operating a doctor's office, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just says, hey, listen, yeah, I could apply to this particular solution, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's exactly built for me. Throw something out there that has a doctor's office in the background, and highlight the value prop. It's just going to stick a lot more, and they'll resonate with it a little bit easier.
Yeah. I know we're bumping up against time here, so I'll maybe we just go through this last slide, Jacob, if you jump to the next one, and then we'll kick off our final poll. But this is something that I bring up all the time in customer conversations. If you're competing against large national providers, you are in a perfect scenario to be agile and do something different. And this is what we're seeing our customers who are really succeeding in the markets do. Because you're small, you're agile, and you can move pretty rapidly. And we are seeing dozens of customers now, up to almost nearly 100 customers that have launched these value-based offers in the markets that they're serving. We've been seeing this for the last 18 months, and these customers are seeing massive growth in ARPU, reductions in churn, increases in their NPS scores. So when we think about, do value-based offers really work? Yes, we are seeing the success in market. And this is both on the residential side as well as on the business side. And it makes so much sense to me because it's speaking to the needs of the customer. It's speaking to how they actually use the product that they're buying from you, not the technology behind the product. I know we all work in a technical industry. I know we all get excited about fiber and the technical aspects and Wi-Fi 7 and all of these things. But most of our customers, that doesn't resonate with. They don't understand that. They don't understand that a gig is even faster than 500 meg because they think that 500 is bigger than one and therefore 500 must be faster. Unfortunately, we legitimately hear those types of conversations from actual customers. So removing the technology aspect of it, focusing on how the customer is actually using the service is going to be a recipe for success here, whether you're on the residential side or whether you're on the business side. I feel like we kind of talked through some of these examples already, so we could probably, just in the interest of time, do we want to jump to the last poll, Melissa? Okay, well, that's coming up. I guess any other question, if there's any other questions that we didn't address, I know there were a couple that came in through the chat. Certainly, if you want the ROI model, please feel free to reach out to myself or Jacob, and we can certainly pass that along, so you can start to plug in some of your own numbers and see what that opportunity would look like. Melissa or Andy, anything else that came in that we did not address?
Get Andy seeding the population.
Well, we have one question that's come in. What resources does Calix provide for team training?
Jacob, you want to speak to some of what the team is doing there?
Yes, we have a couple different options. So when we talk about technical side of things, we will host a full workshop on site and walk through the technical components of how you want to deploy SmartBiz, figuring out how you want to position it. Additionally, separately, we can do a full sales training, right? What are the value statements that you want to focus on? Give you some discovery questions to help lubricate the conversation a little bit in your favor. But we have a full success team that's dedicated to exactly this, is launching SmartBiz. So lots of resources, again, on-site, virtual, and workshop style versions of training. And then we do have digital versions as well in Calix University and Learning Academy.
We have another question. Will the slides be available after the presentation?
I have no objections at all.
Perfect.
Yeah, we can send it off.
We just got to figure out where to put it, but yes, we can definitely share. And I saw your comment, Cody. I'll send you along the ROI model.
Okay. So we are right at, I guess we're 60 seconds early, so we'll give you 60 seconds back. You're welcome. We appreciate everybody's time. Thank you so much for joining. If you do have any questions that you forgot to ask, or just strapped for time and you weren't able to ask, feel free to reach out to Gabe or I, and we're happy to respond as quickly as possible. But apart from that, enjoy the rest of the week, and thank you again for joining.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We will share the recording when it's available. Have a wonderful week. Thank you again.